Hey everyone, welcome back to another Take Back Mondays episode. Today I have a very important guest who's going to come talk to us all about relationships. Jeeva Sam, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure to be here, Krista.
Now we're going to hope that our internet is holding up because I've had lately these problems with my internet. Don't know why. So fingers crossed. I do notice people were telling me last week that the quality was a lot better on YouTube than on LinkedIn. So I've reinstalled LinkedIn reconnected it. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll be good. But so Jeeva, you just to summarize, so you have been coaching couples. You're also a pastor, is that correct?
Yeah, so I've retired from active pastoring in a congregational setting in 2017, but before that it was like over 35 years
Oh
that I
wow.
did that. Yeah. And even before I retired, actually, my wife Sulojana and I, we started mentoring married couples, who basically, like we didn't actually set out to do this. Like it was not something that we had ever planned, like, well, one day this is what we'll be doing. It's just one of those things that people started asking us to help them, and so we kind of fell into it, and then here we are 6 years later still doing it.
And now you've built your second career around helping couples, so your mission continues. Well, thank you first of all for being such a servant leader because that's very difficult work. You know, being a pastor and then also helping couples through something that is very, very emotional. So I know that that can be really draining to be involved when there's all that energy between people. So, what you do is amazing. And I wanted to bring you on the show because you also now have published a book, right?
Yes,
And this book is called The Unbreakable Marriage.
that's right. Yeah, I just happen to have a copy with me. Can you view it? Let's
Yay.
see if I can make
There,
it
there.
clear.
Now I
Yeah,
can see it better.
yeah, I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
turn it. Yeah, I
Awesome.
can
I
see
love that title. And I have this book. It's amazing. I just have a digital copy though, so
it.
it's better when you can show us. Um, so we have Juana. Thanks for stopping by, Juana. We're talking today with Jeeva, who unfortunately your significant other, your lovely wife, is at work, I understand.
Yes.
Um, but I'm happy at least you could come and applaud what you've been doing to help people with their marriages. So you fell into this work kind of by accident because people were asking you for help. um, what I want to know is what are the biggest mistakes that couples make that push them to that situation? Because I'm sure that before you get to the point of having to reach out to somebody like you and say, help, we actually need your help, there's a series of mistakes that have to have happened up until that point, right?
Yeah.
Is there some common denominator, or are there just the classic four things people, right? We know there's about four reasons people get into marital trouble, right?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the fundamental things that we see, or common things that we see in a lot of couples, is that like when you're in the courtship period, you always see the best of the other person, and so you do a lot of overlooking rather than looking over carefully, and so there are certain things that you think, oh, that's just so cute, that's a quirk, and so it might be like a personal hygiene thing or some kind of mannerism or a habit, which you may not realize in the courtship days that it's actually an addiction. And
Mm,
then so you just tend to overlook it because there are so many other positives, that like will basically cancel out this one negative. And so, yeah, so I think a lot of times people go into, I mean, this is the expression that love is blind, and to a certain degree that is true. And it's but it's not totally blind, it's just some things you choose to overlook.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes those things, when you start living in close quarters and you start doing life together on a daily basis, some of those little things get amplified, and they turn out to be not just minor irritations anymore. They, turn out to be major irritants. And so that's number one. The number two thing is, when you do start having some issues, I think a lot of couples that come to us do not address them right away. They keep on holding it inside of them. So, for example, like the other day, somebody asked me on a podcast, like, what's the number one thing that you think couples should be doing to avoid getting to that place where they come to you? And I said, you have to learn to forgive quickly. If you
Mm-hmm.
learn to forgive quickly and you don't, hold grudges, because grudges, they start out as babies, but when you nurse them, they grow into monsters. And so after a while, you get to a place where whenever you look at your spouse, like you cannot see anything positive anymore. And it's usually not because, like every once in a while somebody will go and do like something really major that'll make you feel that way. But a lot of times it's the things that build up. And so if you can avoid these things from building up, like one of the rules of thumb that we teach, which is actually a biblical principle, is the Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your anger, meaning don't go to
Mm-hmm.
bed angry. Like, try and resolve, if something did happen that day to upset you, resolve it before you go to bed. So it's always the little things, Krista, that when they build up, it's like little drops of water, turn into an ocean. And so the little things, and in this case, little grudges that you keep to yourself, they just stay there, they simmer, and then one day, like a volcano, they just boom, come up, and it's not usually, pretty, or that silent anymore.
Oh my goodness. So if I move in with somebody, we're married now, and I start getting upset about these little things, and I'm mentally starting to tally up and keep a blacklist. I'm like, he's done that 4 times now, and I've asked him not to do it, and he doesn't understand. Look, his shoes are still there. He doesn't put his shoes away. These little thing like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm getting bitter about this. Is there a right or a wrong way to talk to the person about it? Because, couples, they kind of just say, oh, you left your shoes out, so why didn't you put them away? And
Yeah.
usually the person will just put them away because they're bothered by it, where
Yeah.
the other person wasn't. So they'll
Yeah.
do it for them.
Yeah.
And then the second time, and every time they're getting more and more angry, and they usually are saying something, but the other person is just kind of not, taking it seriously, or like, oh yeah, sorry about that. And you're just like, no. So what could a person do to not go to bed angry with those kind of things? Is there a different way that I should be talking?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, because we've actually, I very vividly remember one couple coming, and they were not married that long, actually. And they were like kind of getting to the place where we can't stand being with each other, type of thing. And so when we probed them, what essentially happened was, in this case, was the husband who had a lot of things that he saw his wife doing that he was, like just couldn't handle. But he brought a couple of things up, and she exploded on him in anger. And so afterwards, he's like, I better not bring anything up because I don't want to face that rage anymore. Okay. So we taught him a simple formulation that actually fixed it for good. And the simple formulation is, so let's use the example of shoes. Okay. So to tell, your spouse, when you that's the first part of the formulation. So when you leave your shoes, just out there, that I can trip over it. When you go out, stay out late, and you don't tell me about it. When you go on a shopping spree and spend money that we haven't talked about, no matter what the issue is, and then you say, I feel. So
Mhm.
you couch your hurt in terms of your feelings, rather than blaming. Like when are you ever going to learn, to talk to me before you go and spend money? Like, that's going to get a very defensive response.
Right, right.
or angry response. Somebody might slam the door shut and walk out, or just not talk at all. But instead, like for example, Sulojana says to me, Jeeva, when you stay out longer than I thought you would, and you didn't phone me back, then like I feel worried. When I'm wondering what's going on, and now all of a sudden, the two things that have happened. First of all, she actually pointed out exactly what I did wrong. She did not gloss over it. Made me aware, this is exactly what you did, Jiva. That was not good. But then she's saying, hey, this is how I feel when you do
Mhm.
that. And so, and no matter what kind of a man or woman you are, when your spouse tells you that they're feeling a certain way and it's not positive, like you cannot tell them. I can't tell Soja, you can't feel that way. Like that's not an appropriate response. I have to take her feeling seriously, and now I have to process that and say, okay, how can we now, make sure that this hurt doesn't happen again? So we move into a more constructive problem-solving mode. But a lot of times, I think couples don't get to the point of actually resolving conflicts simply because it's phrased the wrong way, and especially when there's any kind of blaming involved. That's human nature, Krista. Like whenever somebody blames us for something, our first response is to prove that no, we're
Yeah.
not to be blamed.
Right, right. Well, there's two responses depending on your personality, either defensiveness and equal anger, like, why are you always bothering me about this stupid
Yeah.
thing? It's not important. The shoes don't bother you. It's not a big deal. Defensiveness, anger, or the opposite. There's stuffers who completely shut down and
Yeah.
avoid conflict, and they will literally walk away
Yeah.
and they won't even respond, and they'll start ignoring you, giving you silent treatment. You're
Yeah.
like, aren't you listening to me? I told you about your shoes. And they're just like,
Yeah.
go away,
Yeah.
or they even leave.
Yeah. It's
Some people will turn around and say, I'll be home later, and they punish their spouse by getting back in the car and actually
Yeah.
leaving. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're like, oh no, now I really
Yeah.
did something. So
Yeah.
make escalation. Either way, instead of
Exactly.
like solving the problem, there's
Yeah.
a bad outcome, and then the next day and the next day, and then suddenly it's too many
Yeah.
times, right?
Yeah. 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 In our case, like I was the one that would always like really get upset and say something, where Slojana would actually just clam up, and not say anything, and give me the silent treatment in the early days of our marriage.
I'm like that too. I'm like
Yeah.
that too. I would rather not fight,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, we're both tired.
Yeah.
And I'd say, look, we have a busy day tomorrow. Let's just not make a big deal out of it. And
Yeah.
if the spouse is like, no, 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 we're going to talk about this. We're not going to bed. We're going to really make sure we understand why your shoes are always in the hallway. Huh? I fell down the stair. The light wasn't turned on. I fell over your shoes. And, anger about something and that's another thing. So what you said about the proper way to, first of all, not go to bed angry, but to communicate in a different way, to
Yeah.
make sure you framed it in terms of, I know you care about me. So if I'm feeling hurt about this,
Yeah.
that's what we're focusing on. We're not focused on what it was particular. We're focused on something happened that makes me feel worried, upset, angry. And then the second part of that I'd like to know is, what about if the two people don't see eye to eye about this issue?
Yeah.
So like you going out and not phoning, for you, it's no big deal. You're loyal, you're an adult, you're trustworthy. You're like, come on, like, can I even spend an hour? So for you, you don't understand her worry, or you don't understand this reaction.
Yeah.
And that's usually the case. One person's very upset about something, and the other person is like, oh my gosh, this is like so ridiculous that you're angry.
Yeah.
And so they downplay the person's feelings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't see, and it's a value question. It means me leaving my shoes in the hallway, it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
But it seems to bother you, like,
Yeah.
to the point that we're arguing about something
Yeah.
so stupid, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
So not only reframing the question of, I feel hurt when you leave your shoes out there, or when you don't phone me when you're going to be late,
Mm-hmm.
but how can you convince the person that their worry or their hurt is important enough for you to actually change that behavior?
Okay.
That's what you see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. No,
otherwise it will repeat. You're like, oh, I won't do it again.
yeah.
And then a couple of weeks later, you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
And so then it starts feeling like the values may not be aligned
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
deep down, I don't see the problem. So
Yeah.
I'm just doing it to please you. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to please you.
Yeah.
But deep down, this is like not the same value to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And that's surely the case with many couples, right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And so like one of the very helpful techniques that you can learn, which you know, and I know that you do it very well when you're having a sales conversation with people, is simply mirroring. It's just basically repeating what you just heard the person say. So Sulojana says to me, like whenever you stay out late and you don't let me know, I feel worried. Sulojana, you feel worried, upset, angry. And so I'm just repeating back to her. What I'm basically giving her is permission to say something more.
Mm.
And so now she can say, yeah, this has been happening a few times. Once in a while I can understand. See, the tone of the conversation actually changes. You're not really like duking it out anymore. You're actually like kind of reasoning your way through it. And what you're really trying to do is to help your spouse understand why, like it really bothers you. For example, like with the shoes. Well, like I tripped over them last night, and so I'm like, and I'm sure you don't want to see me hurt, do you? Like you kind of put it that way, and as like when you're married, I think one of the things that you really need to understand is that you need to find a way to heal your spouse's hurt more than anything else. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, that apologies often don't land well, is because the person who apologized feels very good. Oh, I'm sorry. I
Problem
got that
solved.
over you now.
Yeah.
Now everything
Right,
is
right.
fine. And the other spouse is like, hey, hold on a second. You apologize, but I'm still hurting, you know?
Mhm.
And so to let your spouse even know that, hey, you acknowledge their hurt. And that's where the parenting, mirroring, active listening, whatever you want to call it, comes into play. Because a lot of times, if you try to move without acknowledging someone's feelings, like you're not going to get too far. You may still come up with some kind of a solution, but that hurt is still there, is still left unresolved. And so
Mhm.
the first thing that I would say is you got to somehow keep that conversation going, and you have to tone it down. Now, if, for example, when you mentioned that, and your spouse snaps at you, like rather than acknowledging your feelings, then one of the quickest ways to diffuse the situation is to say time out. And like your question about what if, like I'm not ready to resolve this, because I'm already thinking about tomorrow and it's getting later in the evening. Then it's like, rather than try to come up with some kind of a half-baked solution where one person is not like fully into it, you're better off to say, you know what, honey, how about we just like call a timeout right now. And I know tomorrow my calendar is full, your calendar is full. Tomorrow evening, we have this, half an hour slot. Why don't we grab a cup of coffee tomorrow night at 7 o'clock or 7:30, and at that time we'll talk it out. So in other words, the person that wants to fight, isn't completely put off, because you're not saying I'm not going to, deal with this. You're basically saying I'm just not in a space right now to deal with it. And so these are simple things that you can do to be in the right frame of mind, and also with the right heart, to be able to handle things. And one of the important things that you need to do is what we teach in our book, is that before you actually have that meeting afterwards, you must forgive your spouse before the meeting. In other words, your forgiveness should not be contingent upon what they say or promise. So when you go in there, in your heart, like you're not harboring anything against them, and so if both of you do that, and now you meet, your conversation is likely going to be civil, and it's going to be solution oriented, and you don't have all these other, like some of the anger and stuff. Is not, it'll still come out, but maybe it'll be a little bit more muted. because you're not waiting for the apology to come before you will forgive.
I like that a lot about going into the meeting, taking a time out, because I think a lot of couples don't see each other during the day because people are working. And so at night, both people are tired. You're not in your best. You're not at your best,
Yeah.
Um, and so there could be a tendency to over dramatize things because we're also bringing in not only the incident, but we're bringing in a lot of pent up emotion from the day. So
Yes.
that energy is just coming out. And that's why I think a lot of these things can be easily exaggerated,
Yeah.
where something small becomes a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And so I like that, taking a time out so that you really can go in with a clear head, but also not looking to come in and fight, not having a list of like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell them all the things they did wrong. Juana says forgiveness is crucial for a healthy partnership. If you don't have that, you hold on. And Juana is this is also applying not just for marriage, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is applying for brothers and sisters, fathers and sons. I mean, it's so sad when I see people who hold grudges, and families get broken apart because of something really, really not that important that
Yeah.
happens. And then people just don't find forgiveness for years even.
Yeah.
Um, so this is all really, really great. Now another question I'd have is in couples, a lot of times there is a more dominant type and a more passive type.
Hmm.
Because in humans, that's how we are,
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be with gender. Sometimes the woman is the more dominant in the relationship, but
Hmm.
it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
What matters is it's very frequent that both people, there's one that's more opinionated, bossy. I'm trying to say it in a nice way, but and the other person is kind of more laid back,
Yeah.
easygoing type.
Yeah.
And this seems to be actually a quite good marriage, right?
Yeah.
Having two very strong people would be kind of a difficult marriage, and
Yeah.
having two people who are weak would be, you know, too relaxed. So I think it's a good to have these opposites. But for marital disputes, this could be an issue because maybe the person who is more easygoing, relaxed, feels like they're always being bullied, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
So what I mean by that is, let's say we go into a meeting about the shoes or about staying out, and the person who is more easygoing, they just want to avoid conflict. They just don't want to make a big deal out of everything. They have a problem maybe even advocating for what they actually want in the
Yeah.
relationship
Hmm.
because they want to make peace at all costs.
Yeah.
They're like, I just want a peaceful family life. I don't want to make any problems. Whereas the other person, they're ready to fight. And so I'm wondering if you have any if you've seen this before in couples, first of all, and if you do, how do you kind of bring people into a more equal balance in terms of what he wants, what she wants?
Okay. So the best solution is actually to use some kind of a common method or instrument to work through hurts. Like for example, in our book, we talk about the process of reconciliation, and then we talk about a pattern of resolution. Now, one of the things that again, the forgiveness, and then the talking things out. We won't have time to go through it right now, but I'll focus on the resolution part, because once you kind of dealt with some of the emotions, and you understand each other at that level, the process, or the pattern of resolution that we have in the book actually basically says, first of all, like, identify exactly what you're fighting about, what the real issue is. And then the first thing that you do is you actually ask yourself the question, what did I do to contribute to this problem, to this issue? And so, so,
Mm.
so both people have to answer that question. Like I still remember this many years ago. when I was a young and pastoring, actually, somebody came to me, a couple came to me, and I just married them maybe a year or two before that, maybe no, actually it was just over a year. And she said that, he never stays home, Pastor. He's always out, playing pool with the boys, and whatnot. And so I'm thinking, gee, he didn't sound like the kind of guy that would want to leave his wife. They were so much in love when they got married and so on. And so I very innocently asked, when you guys are together, what do you do? And so she said, well, I love watching all my television shows back in the days when we watched TV, not on the internet. And he said, well, I like to putt around in my shop. And so they were not doing anything together. So after a while, it looked like his problem, he was going out, being with the boys. But really, on the other hand, as soon as he said that, the light bulb went on in her head, and she said, oh my God. It's like, okay, obviously, and because he said he didn't like watching the shows that she was watching. So it's like, okay, we didn't actually have something to do together. In other words, what looked like his problem turned out to be something that they were both contributing to. And so when you get to that step, a lot of times it takes away the blaming completely. And then the next step that you come up with, Krista, is together you brainstorm all possible solutions. In other words, it kind of, like, a lot of times conflicts don't get resolved because, in like the example that you used, or the language that you used, the dominant person will come and say, this is the way that we're going to handle it. I think this is the only way to do it. And then they'll spend the next few minutes trying to convince the other spouse why this is the best solution. And if that person is a little bit, subdued, gentle, don't want to fight, they'll say, okay, have your way. But it's a very reluctant, okay, have your way. Like, it's not really a resolution. It is more of a passive, pacifying the other person. Instead, if you both lay all possible solutions on the table, and then you go back and say, let's look at every one of them, one at a time. And sometimes when you look at the list and you start going through them together, like, some of them will, that'll never work for us, like, chuck that one. And eventually you maybe end up with one or two, or a hybrid of a couple of solutions. One you proposed, one your spouse proposed, and it's like, hey, how about we do it this way? So now both have ownership. Now, let's say, for example, in our case, like, Sulojana comes up with a solution that we both eventually agree, you know what, that's what's going to work for us. So at that point, like, it doesn't matter whether I came up with it or she came up with it. It's our solution. And let's say that I'm maybe a little bit hesitant about, I'm not sure if it'll work or not, but it seems to be the best of all the alternatives we have. Now what we do is we put a timeline on it, and we say, okay, we're going to try this for a month. So for the next month, I'm not going to pick up your shoes after you. We're going to see how that works. We're going to see how well you do with removing them out of the way yourself. And if that doesn't work, now we can go back, but we already have a list of other solutions that we can look at, that we brainstormed, right? And so you get away from this, like, one person dominating and the other person always having to give in, which in maybe 20, 30 years ago, we saw that pattern in a lot of marriages. Usually it was the guy, the husband had his way all the time. And the wife honestly didn't mind, like, they didn't think that they were a doormat just because they did that. But it didn't always lead to a resolution that everybody was at peace with, and so it would still go down as a little bit of a hurt, and that hurt might come out rather passively or passive aggressively down the road. So it's better to lay it all on the table, and let's agree on what we're going to make work right now.
Well, I think in the issue of the dominance and the inequality in the person themselves, in the personality, often the person who is the more easygoing, submissive one in the relationship, they find unhealthy ways to cope. And it could be simply depression. They fall into a depression, they have a depression, and everyone's like, what's wrong? Why are you depressed? And they don't tell it's something to do with this, but it's because they have always just done everything for everyone else, and they just have never realize their own dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, what happens is everyone treats them that way. So the spouse, the children, the neighbors, no one does anything nice for them
Yeah.
because they're used to that person being the one to do everything.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we don't need to really do anything for her. She never asked for anything. She's selfless. But after a while, that hurts her because she's like, no one has ever given me flowers or invited me or bought me something nice. And,
Yeah.
or I had an aunt who was like that and very quiet, very submissive. And she was a closet alcoholic.
Mm.
And she died of liver failure.
Mm.
And when they brought her in, they said she's been drinking herself to death.
Wow.
Like her alcohol levels are way beyond, and no one would ever have guessed.
Huh.
But she was she had to find some way of feeling. I don't know. So this is why I think it's actually not okay, because after a while, everyone hurts when there's too much. But I love love everything you've said today has been amazing. And I just want to end the podcast by saying that that I really would like people to check out your book. So I'm going to put the link here in our chat so that people can find it, and I'll just add it to the show notes afterwards. There we go. So do you think there's a future for marriage? There's a lot of people now who, especially younger people, who are choosing not to get married or getting married older. And what is your opinion about that? I mean,
well,
you're a fan of marriage, I can tell.
I'm definitely a fan of marriage, but because I was, like in the congregational setting for 35 years, I not only did the weddings, but then often saw what people did in their marriage following the wedding. I think we build up weddings way too much, to be honest with you. And there's way too much energy that often goes into planning a wedding than in planning a marriage. And so
I love that.
to me, one of the things that, and this is one of those unintended consequences that has come out of our book, is many people who picked up the book have said something along the lines of, I wish I had this book before I got married. Yeah. And so what that is impressing upon us is the need for people to go into marriage adequately prepared for the realities of marriage, and having some tools in a toolbox, so to speak, handy, so that like even some of the things we talked about today, so that when you face those situations, you have some healthy ways of dealing with stuff that comes up, because stuff will come up, whether you want to or not. And so rather than gloss over it, rather than keep things to yourself, rather than develop like unhealthy patterns of coping, like you talked about your aunt, then if you go into it knowing, hey, this is the way that we can handle it, or like some people have said, your book is actually not a good one to read from cover to cover, but it's a good reference book, so that once you know what the contents are, and then you run into a particular issue, you go look up that particular chapter, so it was finances, or your time, or resolving conflict, or whatever the case may be. And the message that I want to tell everybody is like, our book is not the be all and the end all, but really that don't be afraid to ask for help as soon as you sense the need that something is not quite right, or something is not working well. And help doesn't always means you have to go seek out a professional. Sometimes it may be just talking it over with a good friend, who understands, or maybe a friend who has gone through something similar to what you have gone through. And just don't keep it bottled up inside of you, and then, if it gets to a place that, like one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, what if my spouse is not willing to go for counseling, therapy, etc.? You know what? You go and get the help that you need. Like, don't let that stop you, from moving out of that place, because you don't have to suffer like that. So go take care of yourself. And sometimes when you do that, like, your spouse starts to notice some changes in you, and it's like, oh my goodness, this stuff does work. Maybe I should go and get some help too.
That's so good.
But whether they change or not, you cannot change them. I think that's one of the big lessons we all learn in life is you can't change anybody else. That people must want to change themselves. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm rambling. I'll stop there.
We could talk for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. Love your book. And I could totally agree with what that person said about having that as a reference book. I hope that more couples will seek out premarital counseling. I know that in like Catholic weddings, I think that's one of the things they require.
Yeah.
They say, if you want to get married, before we set the date, I need to interview both of you separately.
Yeah.
And then together so that I
Mhm.
can prepare you for what it will take to have a great marriage.
Yeah.
And I love that. And what you said about doing the, getting your book and everything. I'm waiting for your course, Marriage 101. I want like a university, like look, for everything important in life, we have training.
Yeah.
Like, kids are staying in school for 12 some years to get prepared for life.
Yeah.
To drive a car, you need to have a license.
Yeah.
So how come marriage is so easy? And then you go in with these big dreams and zero idea of what it's going to look like
Yeah.
the very day after the wedding.
Yeah.
So it would be great if we had mandatory premarital counseling for everybody, but then the lawyers wouldn't be that rich, would they?
Yeah. The sad thing is even, and I commend the Catholic Church because I think among the churches, the Catholic Church demands it, more than a lot of other churches. But even in my days, when I was actively involved in congregational ministry, like I would give a couple, maybe 2 sessions. Now they were fairly focused sessions because I first got them to do an assessment, this same assessment that we mentioned in the book, which identifies their strengths and growth areas, and then we kind of tailor the sessions. But that was not always adequate. They needed something more beyond just somebody pointing out to them, hey, these are areas that you should improve on. These are areas you should watch out for, like that type of thing. And so something that it's actually in the works. We just finished recording videos for an e-course to go with the book. But the next thing that we're going to do is actually to condense that, into something that is more for premarital couples. And Krista, I'll just finish with this. One of our goals, our dreams, is to see people use the book in a way that a newly married couple or a couple that's young in their marriage goes through the book with a couple that's been married for a while. And
Mentorship. Kind of.
Yeah. So very informal mentorships because they're not in trouble yet. So when they're in trouble, then they need somebody like us to pull them out of the fire. But and so I'm actually talking to a number of pastors and leaders and so on and saying, like, can we help you set this up, for your community, and you do the matching because I don't know your people, but we'll teach them how to use our material, to go through it, and I can guarantee you that the mentoring couple will get as much out of it as the couple being mentored.
I love that. I
but
love
in
that.
the process, there's a friendship that develops. So Krista, the next time that couple has a problem, let's say the woman has a problem, and her priest, she doesn't feel comfortable talking to a priest about it because the priest will likely not understand. Well, there's another woman that she has developed a friendship who already knows enough about her that she'll have the freedom to go and talk. And what I mentioned about not keeping things to yourself, and you can go and talk to anybody. So if you already put that that relationship together, then like that'd be a great way that our book can actually help save marriages, before they ever get to the point of needing to be saved.
Wow. I actually have heard about such groups. I believe that my grandma's church was offering a weekly or maybe a monthly meetup for couples where all the couples, it was just like strengthening your marriage training.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was weekly or monthly or if it was certain time frame, but she said, oh yeah, the married couples can come in and the pastor guides them through advice how to strengthen their marriage. And that could be a book club for you. You could ask the pastor to, if anyone would be interested in reading the book together, everyone buys a copy, comes together on a Tuesday night once a month, and discusses the book just like a real book club, but with more sharing their own, oh, we've gone through this really stood out because we fought about this a lot, or this, because people's marriages change over time, right? Newlyweds have completely different problems and preoccupations than someone with young children, than someone with, we're entering different seasons of our lives. And sadly, right now, I have two friends who are getting divorced, and both of them got a divorce as soon as their kids went off to college. And I was like, what's up with that? Like the kid goes off to college. It's like, okay, our marriage has been dead for a while. Now let's do it. And I find that so sad, because you're about to enter a new era of your life when you should, now you can enjoy each other. You can really take advantage, traveling or spending a lot more time together. The kids are grown up. You should be happy. And on the contrary, it's like, well, now we're going to be single and we're going to be, I think that's the saddest thing ever. So,
So I'll give a little perspective on that. So let's say that they've been together for 25 years, and now they're splitting up. And let's say they got married when they were in their 20s, like late 20s, let's say. So they're still only in their like 50s, maybe early to late 50s. Statistically, you're going to have another good 20, 25 years together, minimum, maybe 30 or even longer, depending on where you're at.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So rather than now going like kind of getting into the dating scene again, finding somebody, starting all over again, what if you took a year or maybe even 2 years to work through what is got you to that point? You still are going to have good 20, 25 years together. And you already know each other like the back of your hand. So you don't have to go and, learn about like somebody else in the same way, because it's going to take some time to get to know them. And plus all the other hassles, that go with the divorce, the children, having to take sides sometimes.
Oh, no. But they'll also have their own set of problems. That's the thing. You can find a new wife or a new husband, but guess what? They're going to put their shoes in the hallway too. and maybe even worse. At least with this one, you know what to expect. With the new one, there could be a lot of hidden new things that are much more deal breaker, right?
Yeah. And you're the same person. Like if you're the same person, then, like why go and make life miserable for another person now? I'm being facetious there.
Oh, this
but
is hilarious.
Take care of your hurts, get healed yourself. And and this is a big thing. Like we notice when we work with couples, because when they come to us, they're totally hurt, like really raw wounds that they're carrying, don't want to look at each other, don't even want to sit close to each other. It's just like sad. But then when they like get their act together, apply the things that we teach them and so on, all of a sudden they start to relate to each other. And one of the things they often say, that the first time a couple said this, it really hit me. She said, my heart has been softened a lot more towards him than when we came in. And now it took him a little bit longer to get to that point, but about 2 weeks later, he said, yeah, I'm feeling, like my heart's a lot softer towards her as well. And then we started to see them relate to each other. Like at that point, they didn't want to have kids. They were quite young in their marriage. And since then, they've had 2 children. We see their pictures on Facebook. And it's like it really warms our hearts to see that happen. But essentially what happened, they both changed individually. And when they started to relate to each other, not out of past hurts, but out of the healing that they've experienced. The hurts don't go away, by the way, right? You never forget them. But the hurts have lost their power to control your relationship. And so no matter, and unfortunately, there are times when people have already made the decision, that they're going to go their separate ways. There's one person is totally fixed on it and the other one can't change their mind. In that case, that is very sad. But we always tell, people in that situation, what, before you jump into another relationship, like get healed yourself. And so that you don't go into another relationship with hurts, because you're going to, so as soon as that person puts their shoes over there, they, oh my God, he's doing.
Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Well, the statistics show that with every subsequent marriage, your divorce rate goes higher and higher, because it's almost like you're waiting. You're giving them shorter time period each time.
Yeah.
And you're picking the wrong person, and you don't have the communication skills. So you're making the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
So many problems that lead to people thinking that they have bad luck, when really everything boils down to us inside, right?
Yeah.
If you're hurt people.
Yeah.
So if your spouse is hurting and you're deep down love that person, maybe you can see past that layer of bad behavior and you can say, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because if it's your spouse or your child or someone really close to you, this is the way we should do. We should say, look, I know you're acting this way. There's a reason. What's going on? Let's find the real reason for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And if they're not willing to like let you help them, then direct them to a place where they can get the help, and be patient with them, till they get the help. Because not, and I think this is maybe a little bit of a guy thing. I think guys don't always, feel comfortable opening to their wives about it. And so, but they'll go and open up to somebody else, external to them. And so you have to encourage them to do that without pushing them to do it, yeah. And so, like, what you were saying really reminded me of one of our fundamental principles, which is there are no such things as marriage problems, but there are two people with their own problems coupled together in a marriage. And so if you try to solve a communication problem with a person that has already got a huge baggage, of hurts from before, then no matter how great a communication technique we teach them, that thing is still going to be, there. It's going to pop up once in a while and sabotage, this wonderful solution that they just learned. And so like, you really need to make sure that you personally, are the best that you can be, the best healed version. Like, nobody's perfect, but get to the place where, you begin to realize, I'm not acting based on my hurts, like, I'm not letting my hurts control the way that I treat you, but I'm going to, and if it is, if all of a sudden I'm getting this burst of anger, and it's not necessarily what they did, then maybe I need to forgive my parents. Maybe I need to forgive my sister who hurt me in a very similar way that I haven't forgiven it before, etc. So anyway, I think that thinking is very important.
No, it's amazing advice, and I hope that people will heal themselves. They won't bring past hurt into their relationship, like trust issues. A lot of people bring one parent abandoned the family, or the husband, the father cheated, or the mother cheated, and then they bring that into them, thinking my spouse is going to cheat on me. Codependency. I think it's good if you become the best person, your spouse becomes the best person, and together you're amazing. But if one person is thinking that the other person is the secret to realizing all their dreams, then that's too much weight on the other person. You have to give each other space too, right? For self-development, and not smother the other person. So I love that you said, let them go find somebody on their own and talk to somebody, give them a little bit of space to like do that. But we could talk another hour easily. So I'm gonna wrap it up. But thank you so much for what you do. This is really an act of service. You're saving a lot of families and all the children that go into those families. So that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And to your wife too, say I said hello, and congratulations for the book. And we will definitely stay in touch, and you will let us know when you have your videos online, so people could maybe buy that as an accompaniment, or a workbook too. Hint, hint. We could do a lot
we already
more.
did the workbook. The workbook is already available.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
That's very smart.
Just want to say to anybody that's watching, like, if you're in a place right now where you need help right away, and the book is good, but if you need personal guidance, then you just go to our website. It's the sams.ca. It's as simple as that. We're the Sams from Canada. So the sams.ca is where you need to go, and just click on it. And, you can then book a totally free consultation with us. We'll go in depth with you and basically, assess, where you're at, give you some ideas of what you need to do. And at that point, you have a choice whether you want to work with us, or you go find the help you need somewhere else. But that's something that that we're here to help you, and sometimes you can't see it yourself, and have somebody else look at you objectively, and with a little bit of expertise behind that we have, we can pretty well tell you exactly what you need to take care of, and that'll at least get you going on your journey of healing.
You guys are amazing. Now I have the go-tos for all the marital problems. So if I ever see anyone fighting, I'm like, no. Here's the book. Here's the book. And if you need more, we go to your website. I love
Exactly.
it. Thank you so much again for coming.
All right,
And we
you're
will
welcome.
definitely see you soon. It's
Thanks for
amazing.
the opportunity. Appreciate you.